Deliberations are now underway at a Collin County courthouse as both sides prepare to try the case of a track meet stabbing in Frisco. Karmelo Anthony is accused of killing Austin Metcalf last spring. Anthony was competing for Centennial High School and Metcalf for Frisco Memorial. Jobin Puttaker has been covering this story since day one, and he's live with some new details on how the trial will unfold.
Chris, it's the judge who gets to decide how to run his or her court. And when you have a trial like this that's so high profile, it's important to sort of lay out the rules of the trial. Judge John Roach of the 296th District Court in Collin County put out this court order on Friday. The judge is presiding in the trial, State of Texas versus Karmelo Anthony. Anthony was a Frisco student who was charged with first-degree murder in the stabbing death of Austin Metcalf, another student at a school track meet in April of 2025. Now, the court order reads, there will be no visual or audio recording by media. There's limited seating inside the courtroom. There will be spaces designated for families, the media, and the public. And there will be tight security with bag checks and magnetometers going in and out of the courthouse and likely the courtroom. We've been told other judges with matters in the courthouse have either adjusted their calendars, moved them to later dates, or will be presiding virtually. Attorney Todd Shapiro tells us this trial is unique, and rarely do you have orders expressly stated like this.
Yeah, I just think because of the high-profile nature of the offense, it gained a lot of attention both locally, statewide, and nationally. And I think the concern is you have a lot of emotion on both sides. They want to keep everybody in check and not make it a complete circus.
We've got the statement from the 296th court. The court finds that this case has generated substantial public and media attention and that unrestricted access or activity may compromise courtroom security, juror privacy, and the defendant's right to a fair trial. This trial is expected to get started on June 1st. Reporting here in Dallas, I'm Jobin Puttaker.
Thank you very much, Jobin. Hopefully this is the step
I don't
along
know.
the road.
I don't know if I completely agree with this. I don't know if that's going to tamp down the noise, keeping out the media, keeping out recordings, keeping out cameras in our courtroom. The public wants and deserves transparency in our courtrooms. It's a public forum. We're allowed to go there. We're allowed to sit. And I think tamping this down is going to cause a lot of problems. Welcome in, everybody. We are live here tonight, LTL Media. Thank you so much for coming in. We're live across 4 platforms, Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter. It's nice to see everybody come in. And we're going to do kind of a recap show here tonight and get you ready for the Karmelo Anthony case that is set for at least 2 to 3 weeks over the next upcoming weeks. And I firmly believe this is a case that will be ultimately talked about, especially heavily on X over the next 3 weeks. So I'm fuzzy again. Yeah, I don't know what that is. It always starts out fuzzy and then it kind of hammers itself out. So I don't know. I don't know what's going on. I did some tweaks to my internet today, but it's just been acting up. But anyway, the show must go on and hopefully it will iron itself out. But again, welcome in everybody. So what we're going to do tonight is I'm going to give you a little bit of a vocal recap first. I have a couple of videos that we're going to play through, and then maybe some possible opening, closing statements for the state and the defense, and probably see how they're going to attack this case. So what I actually did is the last 2 shows that I did, I took the transcripts from that, I threw it into AI, and I said, look, give me an overall recap of this case. And this is what I came up with, and I'm going to read through this for you guys tonight, and then we'll go into some videos here in a moment. So let's see here. Before the trial begins, I want to take a step back and lay out where this case stands, what we know from the arrest, what are the major legal arguments are expected to be, and why this trial has become so emotionally charged across the country. This case that is centered around the death of a 17-year-old Austin Metcalf, who has been fatally stabbed during a high school track meet in Frisco, Texas, back on April 2nd, 2025. The person accused in his death is a young man named Karmelo Anthony, who was also 17 at the time. According to the arrest report and witness accounts, this confrontation began over something that was on the surface that should have never turned deadly, a dispute over a team tent. Austin Metcalf was reportedly under the team's tent, and during that track meet, when Karmelo Anthony, who attended a different school, was allegedly sitting in that area. Austin reportedly asked him to leave. From there, witnesses say situations escalated quickly. There was an alleged verbal exchange, and Karmelo was accused of saying along the lines of, quote, touch me and see what happens. That statement became extremely important, will become extremely important during this trial. And I talked about that exclusively in the last two shows that we did. According to reports, Austin never touched or pushed Karmelo, and moments later, Karmelo allegedly pulled out a knife and stabbed Austin once in the chest through the heart, and Austin later died from his wounds. Give me 2 seconds. I'm going to try to clear up my internet here. It's kind of annoying me. Hang on. Oh. All right. I think that got better. I think that's better. Let's see. I think that's better. I might probably just had to move a wire. Maybe the connection was loose. Let me know if that's better. No, it looks still crappy. Good stuff. Love it. Good stuff. Anyway, show must go on. Maybe it will work itself out here. All right. So where were we? According to reports, Austin either touched or pushed Karmelo, and moments later, Karmelo allegedly pulled out a knife and stabbed Austin once in the chest through the heart, and Austin later died from that wound. And this is what makes this case so devastating. We are talking about two teenagers at a high school sporting event. One teenager is dead. Another teenager is facing a murder charge. Two families are destroyed. A community now is shaken. And the case moves from social media, press conferences, and online arguments now into an actual courtroom. From the beginning, Karmelo Anthony's side has indicated that this will be a self-defense case. According to police, when Karmelo was taken into custody, he allegedly made several spontaneous statements. He reported, quote, I was protecting myself. He allegedly said he put his hands on me. And one of the most striking alleged statements is, I'm not alleged, I did it. He also reportedly asked whether Austin was going to be okay. Those statements are going to matter. The defense is likely going to argue that Karmelo felt threatened, that when Austin put his hands on him, and Karmelo acted in self-defense. But the prosecution is likely going to argue that even if Austin touched or pushed him, that does not automatically justify pulling a knife and using deadly force. That is really the core issue in this case. This trial is not simply going to be about whether Karmelo Anthony stabbed Austin Metcalf based on the alleged statements. That part may not be the main dispute. The real question is going to be whether the stabbing was allegedly justified under Texas self-defense law. Texas law does allow people to defend themselves. Texas does have a strong self-defense law, but deadly force is different. The law does not say you can use deadly force just because someone touches you, pushes you, or gets in your face. The key question is whether the person using deadly force reasonably believed it and was immediately necessary to protect themselves from death or serious bodily injury. That is where the facts become critical. Was Austin Metcalf punching Karmelo Anthony? Was Austin threatening him with serious bodily harm? Was Karmelo trapped? Was there an immediate deadly threat? Or was this a verbal dispute that escalated into an unnecessary fatal stabbing? Those are the questions a jury is going to go over and have to answer. One detail that may become more important is the lack of visible injuries on Karmelo Anthony after the incident. And I talked about that strongly, I believe, in my first show about this. There were no visible physical injuries to Karmelo Anthony. Now, I don't know. We might have photos of his hands, but his mugshot didn't have any physical injuries. Here we go. His mugshot from the day did not appear to show obvious injuries like bruising, cuts, scratches, or swelling. Now, that does not automatically disprove self-defense. A person does not need to be badly injured before they can defend themselves, but it does become part of a bigger picture, especially if the defense is arguing that Karmelo was in fear of serious bodily injury or death. And I do apologize for the really awful internet tonight. I'm sorry, guys. The prosecution is likely going to point out several things. The alleged warning of the touch me and see what happens, the knife, the single stab wound to the chest, and witness accounts, and Karmelo's alleged statements after the incident. The defense is likely going to put on a physical contact, is focused on physical contact, the chaotic environment, Karmelo's age, and the pressure of the moment in the claim that which he believes he was protecting himself. Another major part of this case will be the witness testimony. From what has been reported, there are multiple witnesses nearby, including Austin's twin brother, Hunter Metcalf. Hunter's account could be extremely powerful because he was not only there, but he was there when Austin's identical twin brother and reportedly held Austin after he was stabbed. Austin's family has spoken publicly about the loss, and it's impossible to ignore the emotional weight of that. His father, Jeff Metcalf, has described Austin as a strong student, an athlete, a leader, and someone with a bright future. Austin's mother and brother have also spoken about how Austin was, not just as a victim in the criminal case, but as a son, a brother, a young man in whose life was taken at 17 years old. At the same time, Karmelo Anthony's family spoken out publicly. His mother, Kayla Haynes, has said their family faced threats, harassment, and false claims online. They have pushed back against rumors about fundraising money, their living situation, and accusations being spread on social media. This is where the case started to explode nationally. Instead of focusing strictly on evidence, the case quickly became a social media war. People started picking sides, false claims spread, race became the central part of the online conversation because Karmelo Anthony is black and Austin Metcalf is white. And like we see in so many high-profile cases now, people became forming firm opinions before hearing all the evidence in the court. And that's the way that I always attack things here on my channel. That's how we break things down on my channel. I don't care what race someone is. I want to find the facts. I want to know the facts. I want this to go into a courtroom, and I want the jury to decide. And we can be the public jury in this when we start hearing the facts and tackling that down and tracing those facts down. We can have those conversations. That's why we have these platforms. It's why you come in and watch my show and chat along in the chat and give your opinion. Instead of staying, all right, so we go back here. Instead of staying focused strictly on the evidence, the case quickly became a social media war. People started picking sides. False claims spread. Race became the central part of the online conversation because Karmelo Anthony is black and Austin Metcalf is white. And like we see in so many high-profile cases, people began to form opinions before hearing all the evidence in court. That is something that I want to be careful about here. There is a dead teenager. There's another teenager accused of murder. There are two families whose lives will be the same, and this is not a game. This is not just content. This is about this is not about rushing to the loudest opinion online. This is about facts, evidence, and what actually can be proven in court. One of the most controversial moments leading up to the trial was Karmelo Anthony's press conference, where they were represented by Dominique Alexander of the Next Generation Action Network. I mean, that should tell you right there with that fucking name. That press conference drew major attention. Alexander accused the media of online commentators of spreading misinformation. He pushed back on claims related to fundraising. He criticized the school district. He also raised issues about race, discipline, and how black students were treated. At one point, the presence of Austin Metcalf's father at the public press conference was also called disrespectful, which only added more controversy. A lot of people were critical of the press conference because they felt it shifted the focus away from Austin's death and towards the media criticism, fundraising claims, and broader social issues. Others saw it as Anthony's family trying to defend themselves against the threat and misinformation. But regardless of how people feel about the press conference, none of that decides the trial. The jury is not supposed to decide these cases based on social media posts. press conferences, online rumors, or emotional reactions. They're supposed to decide it based on the evidence presented in court. And that brings us to another major issue, transparency. Judge John Roach has put a strict social media restrictions in place. There'll be no cameras, there'll be no audio allowed in the courtroom during the trial. That means the public will not be able to watch the testimony live. We will not be able to see the witness testify. We will not be able to hear the tone, the pauses, the cross-examinations, or the full courtroom atmosphere the way we have in other high-profile trials. Personally, I do not agree with that level of restriction in a case this high profile. I understand protecting the integrity of the trial, protecting jurors, and making sure the defendant receives a fair trial, but public access matters, transparency matters, and when a case has become this controversial, I think it's even more important for the public to see actually happening in a courtroom instead of relying on filtered reports, summaries, and online spin. And I'll get to the chat here in a minute. Thank you for waiting for me through this process. But that is the reality of this trial. No cameras, no audio. So courtroom reporting will be extremely important. At trial, expect the prosecution to focus heavily on the sequence of events. They will likely walk the jury through the tent dispute, the alleged warning, the physical contact, the knife, the stab wound, Karmelo's alleged statements, and the witness accounts. They will likely argue that this is not reasonable self-defense and that deadly force was not justified. The defense, on the other hand, will likely try to create reasonable doubt. They may argue that Karmelo was confronted, that he was touched or pushed first, he felt threatened, and that he reacted in fear. They may only try to challenge witness memories, the chaos of the scene, and how quickly everything unfolded. That matters because this entire incident may have happened in seconds. Sometimes trials come down too slow. Detailed analysis of a moment that unfolded extremely fast. A jury may spend days or weeks hearing testimony about something that happened in a flash, but it's the job of the court to slow everything down and examine exactly what happened. The prosecution has the burden. Karmelo Anthony is presumed innocent until he's proven guilty, and that matters. No matter how emotional this case is, no matter how tragic Austin's death is, the state still has to prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt. At the same time, self-defense is not a magic phrase. You not just say, quote, self-defense, and the case goes away. The evidence has to support it, and the jury has to believe that the fear was reasonable, the threat was immediate, and the use of deadly force was legally justified. That is the battle ahead. This trial is going to test the difference between fear and legal justification. It's going to test witness credibility, and it's going to test how the jury interprets Karmelo's alleged statements. It's going to test whether a physical push or contact, if that's what happened, can legally explain a fatal knife wound to the chest. And behind all that, two families. Austin Metcalf's family is going into court without their son, without their brother, and what the future they thought was going to have. Karmelo Anthony's family is going to be in court knowing their son could face life-changing consequences if convicted. So before this trial begins, my position is simple. Follow the evidence, not the online rumors, not the racial narratives, not the fundraising drama, not the press conference, not the loudest voices on social media. Follow the evidence. Because at the end of the day, Austin Metcalf is dead. Karmelo Anthony is accused of killing him. The defense says it was self-defense. The state says it was a murder. And the jury will have to decide which version of events is supported by the evidence. So I thought that was a great summary of my last two shows. It's really good. Okay, let me get a sip of water here. Nice to see everybody here. Smash the like button if you can. Looks like my internet's ironing out a little bit here. I don't know what's going on. We're going to have to deal with that later on. But anyway, we do have a super chat goal tonight. I got 5 super chats up there. I think I just saw a super chat come through a couple of seconds ago. Nan checking in. Thank you so much, Nan. I appreciate you. $20 super chat. Says, sending my love for support for LTL. Please like and subscribe. Let's meet those goals. And if we meet the goal tonight, I'm actually going to give away a t-shirt. And I'll let everybody know once those goals are met. Actually, you know what? I'm going to show you. So I got a Justice for Kyron Lopes sweatshirt on tonight, and I have a t-shirt that I want to give away. Kyron Lopes is a case that I've been covering out of Rhode Island, and I'd like to get some eyes and attention on that. I'm going to show you the t-shirt. So we'll give away a Kyron Lopes t-shirt tonight. So it says, what happened to Capitol Police recruit Kyron Lopes? You can read about him, his case, on my website at ltlmedianews.com. And then on the back, we have Justice for Kyron Lopes. And it's been close to 150 days. There's no medical examiner's report. There's no finalization in the investigation. And the thing that I don't like is that the Rhode Island State Police are heading this investigation. Why I don't like that, in Enrique Delgado Garcia's case, what happened? They stepped aside and they took an independent investigation. I don't like the fact that Rhode Island State Police is involved in this, and I want an independent investigation. So if we can meet the goal tonight, we're going to give away that awesome t-shirt so you can wear and support Kyron's family and get the word out about his case. And we'll give that away tonight to one lucky viewer. So let's do this. I got a video here. So there's been some new surveillance footage that's been came up. This video is from about 11 months ago, but this is what's been talked about. We haven't talked about this, and I want to see how this is going to play into the case. As far as I know, the video is not great, but we'll hear from experts here and see how that's going to play out in trial. And then I do actually have from local Texas TV, there were two reporters that actually sat in during the first hearing, and we're going to get a sense of how the courtroom is going to play out with their reporting, and we'll play through that video here in just a little bit. All right, here we go.
We are following a major update in the case of a high school athlete allegedly stabbed to death by another high school athlete at a track meet.
I asked the grand jury to return a first-degree murder indictment against Karmelo Anthony, which they did.
A Texas district attorney taking to social media to announce Karmelo Anthony is formally facing charges that could lock him up for life. But that's not the only big development in this case. We got our hands on details of a surveillance video of the alleged attack that killed Austin Metcalf. We will dive into what it shows. We're on the case presented by Law and Crime. I'm Chris Stewart. Even though the district attorney in Collin County, Texas, is going for a first-degree murder conviction of Karmelo Anthony, there are a lot of people who are taking that teen's defense, saying that.
I was thinking about this today. I'm just going to pause really quick. I think Carmelo's team's going to have some problems when it gets to the actual situation, and where I talked about this, touch me and see what happens. There's another statement that he allegedly made. Go ahead, punch me and see what happens. And then the idea of reaching in that bag, going in and reaching in that bag. So there's a lot of time there in between to make a decision. And again, this probably happened in nanoseconds, but there's still an opportunity to think if this is the right thing. Taking out a knife and just plunging it into someone's heart because they pushed you, I think there's going to be a really hard time justifying that. I do. All right, here we go.
He acted in self-defense. Now, what does the evidence say? At least the evidence that we know about at this point. The school district in Frisco, Texas, has said it has surveillance video of Anthony's confrontation with Austin Metcalf at that midweek track meet in April, where Anthony allegedly stabbed Metcalf in the chest and killed him. At this point, allegedly murdered him. We'll get into what that video reportedly shows in a moment, but here's what we know about what led up to that alleged attack on April 2nd in Frisco, north of Dallas. Austin Metcalf's and Karmelo Anthony's schools were competing at a track meet. If you've ever run track, you ever been to a track meet, you know that teams typically have spots around the track where athletes can hang out with their teammates in between events. In Austin Metcalf's case, he was with his twin brother and their teammates under a tent, according to police, because rain had started to fall and that delayed the track meet. Now, witnesses say another athlete who wasn't on Metcalf's team stood under the tent. His name was Karmelo Anthony.
Karmelo Anthony, class of 2025, Centennial High School, Frisco, Texas.
That's video of Anthony mic'd up for a football tournament for Carolina Sports District that we found on YouTube. He and Metcalf were both football stars at their Texas high schools. Metcalf was taking recruiting visits at some big schools like Arkansas. He planned to play at the next level. And Anthony also posted on social media that he was receiving scholarship offers to go play college football. You wonder now if that will ever happen because of what he allegedly did next on April 2nd. That day, Karmelo Anthony and Austin Metcalf got into a confrontation under the tent. According to witnesses, Metcalf told Anthony to leave the team's tent. And at that point, Anthony allegedly reached into his backpack and said something along the lines of "make me." Here's what Austin's twin brother told WFAA TV.
I'm just going to pause this real quick. Let's see. Karen says WFAA, and that's the video we're going to play here in a couple minutes. ABC 8 and CBS Texas will have in-court correspondents taking notes. Yeah, I think that's the two reporters that we're going to play here in a minute, which is great. WFAA will recap the day's trial every night if you want to check that out. And I do. And we're probably going to, if they do like a live broadcast, a live recap, I'll make sure that we can do that throughout at least this week because I'm still on vacation. I go back to work on the 8th. So we're going to try to keep the updates going as much as I can. And if I don't get to it every night, at least maybe every other night, and we'll do some recaps and talk about it. Also, thank you so much for the $20. I appreciate that. We're about 3 away from making the goal. And if we make the goal tonight, we'll give away a Chiron Lopes t-shirt. And thank you for your support. I appreciate that, Karen. You're great. All right, here we go.
There was this kid, before I knew his name now, this kid was sitting under our tent at track. We asked him to move.
You live there?
He started getting aggressive.
I would love video outside the courthouse if you could get some. I wanted to get this. Lainey, thanks for checking in. She said, thank you for following this case. I live in Collin County, and I'm hoping to get into the trial tomorrow with very limited availability. I would just express this. Get there ASAP in the morning as early as you can. There's probably going to be a ton of media and a ton of people hiked out front. If you saw my coverage of the Karen Reed trial here, it was nuts. Getting courtroom access was very limited as well, and it was crazy. And I love all these new faces that have come in and have been watching the stream. Please make sure to subscribe. I do other true crime cases here. We follow cases like this in my local area. I'm from Massachusetts. And we cover a lot of corruption cases here as well, and a lot of the stuff on the national stage. So I love seeing all these new faces here in the chat. I appreciate you, and I hope you get to stick around and watch some of my other presentations as well too. But yeah, I mean, Diane, if you're in there, it's going to be the Supreme Court, and that'd be great. I would love video if you could get video. That'd be really great. Okay, here we go.
Talking reckless. And my brother stepped in and said, you need to move. And he's like, make me move. Austin grabbed his backpack.
Wow.
This
So
kid,
sad.
I tried to whip around as fast as I could, but I didn't see the stab.
Oh,
Police
wow.
say as Metcalf went to move Anthony, Anthony pulled out a knife and stabbed Metcalf in the chest. Metcalf died in his twin brother's arms. What Anthony allegedly did next could be damning if his case goes to trial. Anthony allegedly ran to another part of the track after stabbing Metcalf. When police arrived, the first officer to make contact with Anthony wrote in the arrest report that he asked Anthony to put his hands in the air. Then Anthony allegedly said, quote, I was protecting myself. The officer also said that Anthony told him, quote, he put his hands on me. And when the officer said that he had Anthony in custody, the teen allegedly said, and this is the damning part, quote, I'm not alleged, I did it. Police say that Anthony ditched the knife and ran before.
And this is what I talked about here. If you look at the first mugshot, I think this is, obviously going to be shown in court, and they're going to, and the prosecution's going to say, look, there's no injuries to his face. Now, I don't know. He may have some injuries to his hands. He may have an injury to his arm, his leg. We don't know yet. And they obviously would show that in court, because usually when someone's taken in to custody, they photograph the hands or any other visible injuries so they can have those for court. But if you look here, again, this is going to be a problem. There's no busted lip. There's no black eye. There's no bump to the head. There's not a scratch. This could play big for a jury.
He was arrested by officers who note in their reports that Anthony was hysterically crying when arrested, and he asked if Metcalf would be okay. Anthony was initially held on $1 million bond, but then the judge in this case, less than 2 weeks after he was arrested, lowered Karmelo's bond to $250,000, which he was able to make. Here's video per WFAA of Anthony walking free. Wow. He will have to wear a GPS monitor, be on house arrest, and he checks in with the court each Friday. And if he doesn't follow those rules, he will go back into custody. Before we get back to this episode of On the Case, I want to talk about something important.
All right, we're going to get past the commercial. Here we go.
Ford. Now, the lowering of the bond to $250,000 made the judge the target of threats. Collin County, Texas posted on social media saying, quote, "We are aware of a social media post on this platform that appears to dox a sitting judge. Sharing a judge's private information is a crime and will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law." Cameras may not be allowed in court for this case, but there is so much of this trial that is very visible playing out in the court of public opinion. A crowdfunding site has raised more than $500,000 for Karmelo Anthony's defense. People saying that they believe Karmelo is not a murderer and that he acted in self-defense. Anthony's family held a news conference saying they have become the victim of threats. Here's Anthony's mom speaking per KDFW.
In wake of this tragic incident, our family has been under attack. Whatever you think what happened between Karmelo and the Metcalf boys, my 3 younger children, my husband, and I didn't do anything to deserve to be threatened, harassed, and lied about.
And the tension between families has been high. At that same news conference, Jeff Metcalf showed up. He's Austin's dad. He was there. He stood in front of cameras and sunglasses and protest until he was escorted out per KTVT. Jeff Metcalf has also been vocal on social media, and he posted a response to the news that Karmelo Anthony, his son's alleged killer, had been indicted on a charge of first-degree murder. I'll tell you what he said in just a moment, but let's get to this grand jury indictment.
Earlier this spring, our community was shaken by what happened at a school track meet in Frisco. The violent loss of 17-year-old Austin Metcalf.
Collin County District Attorney Greg Willis posted that video on social media announcing that a grand jury
3.7 or 3.8, right? His GPA. Both smart, intelligent young men, athletic. And this is the situation we're in. You've got one young man that is dead, and the family's going to have to deal with that for the rest of their life. And you have another young man that allegedly took his life and could allegedly ruin the rest of his life. He could be in prison for the rest of his life because of this. And it's just, you sit here and you just go, where did this all go wrong? What was the influence here? What was the influence? I don't know. It's just sad.
Has indicted Karmelo Anthony on a charge of first-degree murder. If found guilty, Anthony, who's now 18, could face between 5 to 99 years in prison. Jeff Metcalf, Austin's dad, posted on social media, quote, "Indicted first-degree murder," all in caps, with hashtag justice for Austin. Karmelo Anthony's defense attorney is named Mike Howard.
Mike Howard, your Dallas criminal defense lawyer, here to talk to you today about what to expect when you're looking to hire a lawyer.
This is a video of Howard posted on his office's Facebook page just to give you an idea of what he looks like, what he sounds like. Howard hasn't commented on the indictment of his client, but the Anthony family also has a spokesperson in Dallas-based minister Dominique Alexander, who posted this picture with Anthony after he was released on bond. He was the person who escorted Anthony out.
This guy's cash grabbing. That's why this guy's around. And we went into Dominique Alexander's criminal history on my last show. The guy's a baby beater. I mean, it's in court documents. He beat up a 2-year-old kid, and he's beat up women that he's been with too. So he's an abusive guy. I don't even want to call him a guy. I don't even want to call him a man. He's a coward, and he's taken full advantage of this family, gaslighting everything up like most of these assholes do. And he's just there to collect a paycheck at the end of the day. And the sad thing about it is, and I talked about this yesterday, I would hope, I would hope that someone in that family, and they still have time to do some due diligence here and find out what this Dominique Alexander is really about. You know, and I find it very interesting that not a family friend. I mean, this has been almost a year. They've had a year to figure out who this guy is. That a family friend hasn't pulled them aside. Someone chirping in their ear going, hey, you probably don't want to be around this guy. Beat up a 2-year-old kid, and he's a choker. That's in court documents too. He likes to choke women. So why is this guy here? Oh, he's there to collect a paycheck at the end of the day. All right, here we go.
When he was able to make bond, Alexander went public with his reaction to the indictment, calling for people to pray for the Anthony family and saying in part, quote, to the racists, the bigots, and those filled with hate who've targeted Karmelo, his family, and even myself, you do not intimidate us. We are not backing down. This case is yet another example of what it means to be Black in America, where even our self-defense is questioned, scrutinized, and politicized. My involvement, like many others, came as a direct response to the overwhelming hate, threats, and outside influence that have surrounded this case since day one. He also said, quote, there will be a trial. Another critical piece of evidence, if this goes to trial, will be this surveillance video that came from the Frisco Independent School District. The ISD has video from a camera that's mounted on the stadium of the alleged murder of Austin Metcalf. Now, the district is not releasing a copy of the video. They're not letting reporters take pictures of the video, but they did allow reporters to see it. WFAA in Dallas wrote that the video, it's wide angled of the stadium, and the incident happens in the small left corner of the screen. Quote, it's difficult to determine how many people are present or what exactly is happening at the tent. Around 9:55 a.m., a sudden movement is observed at the tent, but the alleged act itself is not visible. There are a lot of moving but heavily pixelated figures at the top of the bleachers, just above the tent and at the bottom of the tent. It appears to be sprinkling at the time, end quote. According to the TV station, that video is believed to be one of the pieces of evidence that was presented to the grand jury ahead of their indictment of Karmelo Anthony this week on a charge of first-degree murder. Joining us now is Bridget Williams, criminal defense attorney. Great to see you again. Thanks for talking about this story with us. What does this grand jury indictment mean for the case against Karmelo Anthony?
So this is just a regular routine process that has to happen for any felony case in the state of Texas. So any case that moves forward to an actual trial setting has to first go through a grand jury. So the thing is that a grand jury, they decide if there was enough probable cause for an officer to make an arrest. So it's a very stark difference from what the grand jury decides and what actually goes on in a trial. So the first step is the arrest that was made by the police officers, did it rise to the level of probable cause? So was there enough evidence? And then if it moves forward to that, past that point, goes to a trial, the burden is raised to beyond a reasonable doubt, which is much, much higher.
And Karmelo Anthony's now been
I don't know. I don't really, Autumn, I have to disagree. I have to disagree with you. I don't see that happening. I think this is, now that I've looked into it, and I have every opinion to make my opinion here, and people in the chat may agree or disagree. That's why we have these public open forums here. I mean, I think there's just so much overwhelming compounding evidence against Karmelo Anthony. I don't see how they're going to justify this. And it goes back to, I think one of the major things here is looking at that mugshot. He doesn't have a busted lip. He doesn't have a black eye. He doesn't have a scrape on his face. And then all the statements that he said. And he even said, like, I'm not alleged. I did it, you know, and that's going to hold really strong with a jury. I truly believe that. You know, now that I've gotten an opportunity to look more into the evidence and we read through the police report on my first episode about this, and there's a lot of damning evidence in there. And it's going to rely, I think, mostly heavily on obviously witness statements, but I think Karmelo's words as well, too. And I think that any reasonable person or reasonable jury, in my opinion, would come to the conclusion that, you know, just because someone pushes you like this, that doesn't mean that you take out a hunting knife and plunge it into their heart. You know, I think there's going to be a hard time defending this. I really do. All right, here we go.
Indicted with first-degree murder. For it to be first degree compared to second degree, what will the district attorney in Collin County, Texas have to prove?
So first degree murder is pretty much meditated, intentional murder, right? I intended to do this. Here in Texas, second degree would be reduced down to a manslaughter charge, which gives not necessarily intent and doesn't also require premeditation or just, I intended for this to happen, the intentional killing of another. So that's the difference there. So it's a pretty straightforward thing there. Was there an intentional killing of another? And those are set elements that are set out in the Texas Penal Code.
And with that, because you look at what we understand police say happened at this track meet, and there was this altercation between Austin Metcalf and Karmelo Anthony, and Karmelo Anthony reaches in allegedly into his bag, and then Metcalf comes up to him, and then it feels very spur of the moment in some ways with the narrative that's been laid out. When you talk premeditated, you know, this isn't a case where he woke up this morning probably and felt like he was going to go stab somebody allegedly at a track meet. What's the time that fits in for it to be considered premeditated as opposed to being in the heat of the moment and something happens where I would assume it would be second degree murder?
Yeah, that's a good point. I think that that's something that would come out in the trial setting. However, in this situation, Karmelo Anthony, he admits to.
And here's the thing, though, too, is this is first degree murder. What is first degree murder? First degree murder is premeditated murder. So again, we haven't heard of all the evidence. We don't know what's there. There could be more evidence that leads up to allegedly that this could have been planned. But I think the first degree murder statement, and I think this is what they're going to get into, is where he said, or allegedly said, it's not alleged, I did it. So that might be where the first degree hits, but there could be evidence, you know, pre to the, you know, before that supports this initial incident or contact. So it's just it's a fascinating case. I want to hear more. I'm thirsting for more. I want to know more about the evidence. I want to know what's going to be said in court. But we'll see. Here we go. Back
the killing of this other young man, right? He admits to it, and he says that he was defending himself. So he's saying, okay, I did intentionally kill him. I meant to do that, but it was because I was defending myself and I felt threatened. I thought that he was going to harm me in some way. I thought that he was coming for me to assault me, to harm me. So I was defending myself. So that's really the difference here. I think that it's more of that difference of his desire to say, well, I was defending myself, opposed to necessarily the timing.
We'll pause this for a second. Donna chiming in says, I honestly think he was overcharged. That's what the jury might have a hard time with. And that could be possible as well, too. But I don't know. I think that statement's going to really hold a lot of water. Like, you know, the alleged statement of, it's not alleged, I did it. You know, I did it. So we have to see. We have to see. Again, I just want to remind everybody, we do have the super chat goal at the top of the chat. Just need 3 more super chats, any dollar denomination, even $2. We can get there. And then tonight we'll give away a free t-shirt to 1 lucky viewer. All right, here we go.
The district attorney who released the video last night saying that the death of Austin Metcalf, it was a violent death, and Karmelo Anthony has been indicted after the evidence was presented to a grand jury on first-degree murder charges. You're in the Dallas area. What do you know about the district attorney in that county, Greg Willis?
Well, Greg Willis is, he's been the DA for a while over in Collin County. He was former prosecutor. He is someone who leads the DA's office pretty much fairly, I would say, in Collin County. But he is someone who's also going to be sure that he goes after the truth and pushes all of the DAs to do the same. But to make sure that you go after the truth, do it fairly, make sure that every person is receiving the justice that they deserve, and make sure that each officer is doing their job properly. And so that's really what any district attorney's job is, to present evidence, and the fact of all the evidence that's presented to them from the police department, provide that to the defense attorneys, and so that way that they can prepare for any trial setting and make sure that any defendant can present their case in a trial the best way they possibly can.
And in this case, let's talk about some of the evidence, some of the facts that have been laid out as far as what we're hearing from police. And I know we've talked about this before, and Karmelo Anthony's defense is going to be that I felt threatened and I had to turn to force, and that ended up in the loss of life of Austin Metcalf. Based on what the law says in the state of Texas about self-defense, how strong of a case does he have?
I'm going to say, in my personal opinion, I don't think it's very, very strong. I'm just going to be honest with you. There's been such a, I guess, a very strong.
It's a defense attorney. This defense attorney saying this, and I have to agree. It's not strong. The self-defense is not strong.
Just a heating, I guess, going on in the area where people are just upset about both sides, really on both sides. But what I would say is that he doesn't necessarily have a very strong argument there for self-defense. Hopefully his defense counsel has something that they're going to be talking about in trial that we haven't heard yet. But based off of just what the law is right now, you have, as self-defense, you have to bring equal force to whatever it is that is assaulting you or that you are presented with. So if someone is pushing you, you don't necessarily have the liberty to go back and shoot them with a gun or stab them with a knife, right? Equal force for pushing would be back with your hands, right? That is equal force. And so it rises above equal force for what we would consider for self-defense on paper.
Because we don't have, there is surveillance video that I know the school district showed reporters, but it seems from the description that you can't really see a lot of what happened. And we don't know that there's video to this point that exactly shows it. But could Karmelo Anthony argue, his attorneys argue, that an Austin Metcalf was being very physical with him, that it was more than pushing? I mean, when it comes to equal force, does it have to be a knife and a knife, a gun and a gun, you know, hand-to-hand combat, as opposed to feeling threatened in a way that he was going to punch me in the face and it was going to cause me serious injury, so I had this knife and it's something that I had to use?
Yes, I think that's a great point. And those are the issues and the matters that the defense counsel will be raising, because those things are up to interpretation, right? And that's what's best for a trial setting. So again, on paper, it's supposed to be equal force. But when you move forward to a trial, the defense counsel is going to be discussing how he felt that this was in fact equal. This was the reason why he felt that he needed to do this in order to save his life. Or why.
I still think he's going to have a hard time. Let's get to a couple of these super chats. Natalie, thank you so much. You're awesome. Love you so much. Channel member, moderator, and huge supporter of me on X. I appreciate you. $5 super chat says, a horrible tragedy, prayers for all involved. I have to agree. I mean, it's just a shitty situation all around. And you have Austin Metcalf that's dead. You have Karmelo Anthony that, I mean, we just saw some really great photos of him in his, athletic attire, real tall boy. I heard he was very good at athletics and had, was very academically sound. And it's just like, where is the social cues here? Who's teaching the social cues? Who's he hanging around with? And I don't want to sound like a boomer. So I know, okay, boomer, but it's the reality of the situation. And where do all these things start? These type of situations start where? Parenting, at the home. You've got to watch your kids as much as, we sit here and you kids might be like, come on, leave me alone. I'm just going to hang out with, Jeff or Tom or whatever. Okay. I want to know where you are. I want to know where you're going. I want to know where you be. As much as I hated that, when I was a kid, and I know you all hated that as well too. I know you all hated that when your friggin' mom or your father would come to you and you go, I'm going out. Well, who are you going with? Where are you going to be? And hopefully your parents were like that, because that's little checks. That's checking you in line. And that might have not happened here with Karmelo Anthony, or maybe he had some bad influences with some friends, or maybe some things online were influencing him. We don't know. We don't know. And again, I'm giving my opinion. I'm just giving some speculation here. But it's completely tragic all around. Thank you, Natalie. Appreciate the $5. Britt, thank you so much. Channel member, and the $10 says, I'm new to your channel. After seeing the truth, fairness, and facts today, I became a member. Thank you. We need more media like you. Well, Britt, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for checking out my channel. And wow, that was a really nice statement. And thank you for becoming a member as well, too. I really do appreciate that. And hopefully you'll catch more of my live shows or my videos when I drop them. And of course, you can check out all my writing on my website at ltlmedianews.com. We got $5 from Backflipped in Mind. Says Cash, Gernon Cannon, Hinton, Victoria Rose Smith, Austin Metcalf. The only way forward is resignation now. Thank you so much for the $5, and I appreciate you. You look new in here as well, and I appreciate that. Let's see. Donna says, in my opinion, if he had time to grab a blade, he had time to walk away. Kids do not think before actions. I know. Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate it. It looks like we did hit our goal, which is great. So we will be giving away the t-shirt at the end of the stream. And let's do this. Maybe we'll start another one here, right? Let's see if we can start another goal and get there. We'll do another 5 super chats, and any denomination would be perfect. And we'll do this, and we'll give the t-shirt away at the end of the stream. All right, let's continue here.
He felt it was necessary in order for him to walk away alive. So he had to do this. Otherwise, he didn't feel like he would have been able to walk away.
There's been so much of this case that as it heads forward, we don't have cameras in the courtroom. Judge Angela Tucker decided against that, but there's so much that's visually playing out outside of court. And there's been threats. The judge was threatened. The family of Karmelo Anthony has said that they have been threatened. You've seen Jeff Metcalf with Austin Metcalf's dad. You can't imagine what he is going through, having lost a son. So there's just a lot of that playing out. And a big controversial part of this has been the bond. And that Karmelo Anthony, here he is, accused of first-degree murder, but he's able to go home to his family after the bond was lowered from $1 million down to $250,000. What, from a legal perspective, went into that decision? Were you surprised that he was allowed out on bond?
Okay, so I would say I'm not surprised at all that he was allowed to be let out on bond. So first, this is a 17-year-old child. That's the way I look at it. He's a 17-year-old child. He doesn't have any criminal history at all whatsoever. In this particular case, he's saying that he felt threatened, his life felt threatened, and that's the reason why he decided to defend himself in this way. So that's his argument.
Hardly. Hardly. And thank you for asking the question. Yeah, we went over that in my stream last night. Hardly did any prison time. Beat up a 2-year-old baby, likes to choke out women, beats on women. Real good guy. Probably the guy I would want around my family, right?
When a judge makes the determination of how to lower a bond, they take into consideration the same things they take into consideration in every case. So when we have a bond hearing, what is the offense? Murder. Okay, we're at the highest level there. Then, does the person have any criminal history? No. Is the person a flight risk? Does he have the resources, means to go to Mexico or go to Dubai, right, and never come back? And does it come back for the actual trial setting? Does the family have the means in order to pay what the original bond amount was? The original bond amount in this case was $1 million. The family has stated and testified that they did not have the resources in order to do that. And then the last element there is he a threat to himself or to others? And in this situation, this is an isolated matter. He's not going around saying, hey, I'm going to shoot up multiple people, or I have a history of doing something like that to where I'm a violent person to society. In this situation, it's isolated. So he doesn't pose a threat to himself or to others. So the court allowed for the bond to be reduced down. And then the person can post that bond if he has the resources to do, which he was able to, but he still had to have an ankle monitor. So Karmelo Anthony can't leave his home without getting permission from Judge Tucker. So he is at his house. This is just allows him to not be in jail until the case is resolved, but to be at his home with his family until the case is resolved. I think sometimes people get the bond hearing confused with the actual trial setting. The only purpose of a bond hearing is, do you need to stay in jail, isolated here until the case is resolved, or can you go home and stay there until the case is resolved?
In the district attorney's announcement of the grand jury indictment, there was a line that
I don't agree. I mean, I think, honestly, I think that Karmelo Anthony should have been in custody. I think he should have spent time in custody. He took a knife out, allegedly, and plunged it into Austin Metcalf's heart. You know, that's a pretty fatal crime. That's a pretty fatal crime. So I don't agree with that. I don't agree.
Talked about in Texas, if you're convicted of first-degree murder, you could spend 99 years in prison, or you could spend 5 years in prison. And that 5-year mark, that felt very low for first-degree murder, just as an outsider kind of looking at it, because when you think of someone who's convicted of that crime, they're never going to get out of prison ever again. Who would ultimately, and we have a long way to go, but if this ends in a guilty verdict, who decides whether it is 5 years or 99 years?
Well, that depends on if the defense counsel goes to the judge or to the jury for punishment. So if they decide to go to the judge, then Judge Tucker or whoever is the appointed judge would make that determination. And they use a series of factors to make that determination. Has the person, been in type of anger management counseling? Have they been doing any type of mitigating circumstances? They would take into account any criminal history, which he doesn't have any. They would take into account the testimony of the victim's family, so their words and what they have to say. She takes into account the testimony of the defendant's family as well. So there's multiple factors that go into that. Then the defense counsel also has the option of going to the jury. So the same individuals who made the determination of guilt innocence can also have the determination of determining the amount of years that a person spends in prison, or, if there's something else that needs to be attached to that as well.
So did you say the defense? So if he's found, it's their decision of whether or not whether it's the jury or the judge makes the call?
Correct. That's correct.
And
so they can choose to go to a jury or the judge. In a situation like this, if I'm defense counsel, if it gets to that point, then I'm going to set to go to the judge for punishment. And that's because the judge has history, right, of listening to cases similar to this. They're less emotionally involved. And so they're there to seek exactly what it is fair based off of the facts that were presented. So if I'm defense counsel in this case, I would be going to the judge for punishment if it got to that point.
And you're in the Dallas area, and it seems like every time that this case comes up, I mean, it's very, very divisive. And we've seen tension between the families. I know Jeff Metcalf showed up at a news conference for the family. It's a lot. And I think about a jury in Collin County where probably everybody has an opinion on what happened. How do you get a fair jury, an impartial jury in a case like this that everybody's talking about?
That's a tough one. I would say that I know that there has been some discussions about changing venues, and that just means changing counties, right? Because it would be difficult to find a fair and an impartial jury in the county of which it happened in. And so that has to be approved, right? So it has to be approved by the judge in the Collin County area, in that court, in order for it to be some venues. I
don't know, Nan, I don't know if you're still watching. And if you are, I want to pose this question to you and see if you can answer it for me. I got a legal question here. So now we're about 12 or so hours from jury selection, can the defense come in at the last minute and put a motion on the table for a change of venue, or has that time basically passed? So I don't know if Nan is still in here, but if she is, I would love for her to answer that legal question. All right, we'll keep playing on here.
Move. So I would say that's probably the first way, is change of venue. The second way for that would be for just to try to do a really, really good voir dire. And voir dire is just a questioning of the jury pool, where the defense counsel and prosecution gets an opportunity to question each of the potential jurors, asking them their true and biased and unbiased thoughts on various issues that are related to this particular offense. So things that are related to the offense that occurred itself, so of this situation, but also how do they feel about officers? How do they feel about racial tension? How do they feel about matters that are going on in our country right now, right? So those are all questions that a defense counsel and prosecutor can ask any of the people in the jury pool. And so that would be the main thing there.
Yeah, it's a case that, I mean, if you're a parent, you feel for the Metcalf family, and you think of Karmelo Anthony's family as well, like those parents and the threats that they say that they've been taking. I mean, it's just a really tough case all the way around. So sad that Austin Metcalf lost his life. We'll see how the legal process plays out. Bridget Williams, thank you for taking.
All right, cool. We're going to bounce out of this. I want to go to the two reporters here from WFAA, and this is the first initial hearing that we're going to go to, but it's going to give you kind of a feeling of the atmosphere of the courtroom. It's going to be a different judge. I think the first time around it was a female judge, and this looks like Chris and Jobin that are going to be actually in the courtroom. We were hearing about that earlier. So let's see here. Nan said the defense could try to do that at the last minute. It will be categorically denied. All right, we're going to watch through this video. It's about 45 minutes, so we can sit back, and then I'm going to end the show with how I feel some of the opening statements for the state could be, and the opening statement for the defense, and then maybe some closing arguments as well too. I drafted up some of those, so I think those will be fun to go through. And then we're going to give away the Chiron Lopes support for Justice for Chiron Lopes t-shirt at the end of the show. So let's hang out. I am going to speed this up just for time purposes, but let's get to this and we'll get a feeling of how it was during the first initial hearing. It should give us kind of how the courtroom is going to go here. Here we go.
Joining us here on WFA Plus, I'm Chris Sadeghi, and we are going to take you inside the hearing, the bond hearing for Karmelo Anthony that happened on Monday morning. There's a lot of public interest on this case. There were no cameras allowed inside the courtroom. So joining me are Jobin Paniker and Brittany Moncrief. The three of us were inside that courtroom, and we're here to really take you through what was said, what you were not able to see and hear because of the ban on cameras. We are going to take you from before the hearing, everything that happened during, and then everything that happened after. And then we have the raw interviews with the DA, the defense attorney, and also the NAACP. I want to start before the hearing. Jobin, you cover Collin County a lot. You've covered a lot of cases at that courthouse. Can you compare the security detail for yesterday's hearing compared to others that you've covered?
So I've been covering Collin County for 12 years, covered some high-profile cases in Collin County, now court trials in Collin County. We had the Grace Ford murder case, toddler who was killed. We had Christina Morris, first missing, then later found dead, that murder case. And then the Billy Shamirmir case that also had some Collin County connections as well. So this was a bond hearing, and normally bond hearings happen within minutes. And it's usually a stack of papers, and the judge goes through them and says, you know, bond approved for this amount, and they go through a lot of them all on Monday, and they happen, like I said, within minutes. This was not the case, right? We had a setup, we had a media plan. They had a plan for all the media to get there early. There was
Collin County covers just on the edge of Frisco. You have Plano, Texas. That Plano back in the 90s, from what I can remember, and I think there's some documentaries out there about Plano, Texas. Plano, Texas had a huge heroin problem, and I'm not sure if it still does. And apparently, from what it was because it was a very affluent neighborhood. There's a lot of millionaires that live there, and the kids were just basically looking for stuff to do. And I remember hearing back in the 90s, and there might be a documentary about it, about how bad the heroin's there, and it was, you know, the rich kid problem with heroin. All right, we'll go back.
There were 8 to 10 officers, 8 to 10 deputies from the Collin County Sheriff's Department. There we had to go through 2 sets of metal detectors. to get into this bond
so.
hearing. Very unlike what I'd normally see.
Yeah, and Brittany, the two families, the Metcalf family and the Anthony family, one thing I observed is the deputies that were there that Jobin mentioned, they had a
thanks
plan
for clearing
to make sure
that,
the families were on
Diana.
different sides of the courtroom, and also leaving the courtroom when it was done, one went after the other to prevent any kind of conflict.
Absolutely. They had pretty much what seemed like a pretty strict schedule. Even when we were waiting in the lobby area right outside the courtroom, we saw Anthony's family be escorted into a side room. And around 8:30 is when they decided to let media in. And then at exactly like 8:40, that's when the family started to go in. And even when we went into the courtroom, we were filed in one by one, and they made sure each seat was filled, media in the back. We sat right behind Metcalf's family. And then on the opposite side was Anthony's family, the Anthony family.
So once everybody was inside the courtroom, the first thing we were looking for was when Karmelo Anthony was brought into the courtroom. Was there anything about him, his appearance that you observed, or the reaction in the courtroom when he entered?
So before we get into that, I wanted to mention that there were no, as you said, no cameras inside the courtroom, which is normal for Collin County, right? What's also normal for Collin County is you're not even allowed to have cameras in and around the courtroom. So the only place where you could have cameras was in the lobby. So all the photographers were out in the lobby, the reporters were out near the courtroom. So we all get escorted in, and there's always this it gets really quiet as soon as the defendant walks in. And in this case, it's Karmelo Anthony, a 17-year-old kid, and he's in a yellow jumpsuit. He's handcuffed, and he's walking in, and it gets really quiet because the families are set. Families are on opposite sides of the courtroom. The media is in the back, and it gets really quiet as soon as he walks in, and then he looks straight at the dais.
Yeah, Brittany, did you observe any emotion or movement or action? From my vantage point, it looked like for pretty much the duration of the hearing, he was pretty stoic, staring straight forward.
Absolutely. The whole time, just straightforward. We didn't see him turn to his family, the other family, nothing at all. One thing that we did notice, though, was Austin Metcalf, his mother, immediately, before the hearing even began, you could see her kind of hunched over and someone there kind of comforting her. So it appears as though she might have been crying or pretty emotional during that time. But when Karmelo Anthony came in, like Jobin said, it was pretty much quiet, all eyes on him, and he just kept looking straight ahead.
So then Judge Angela Tucker enters the court.
It's interesting. I just experienced something like that at a case that I'm covering here in Massachusetts, the Enrique Delgado Garcia case. And I went in for some of the court hearings. It's 4 alleged police officers that killed a police recruit up here in Massachusetts while I was at the academy. You can check out that case if you're new to my channel here. But I was just at some recent hearings too, of some charging hearings. And it was kind of a very similar situation as well. When the defendants walked in, it got very quiet in that courtroom. And Enrique's mom, I mean, every time that I've ever seen her, it's just absolute tears the entire time. I mean, this is just really killing her. And it's just a horrible situation what happened. All right, back to the video here.
And she began the hearing really by pointing out the unique nature of this bond hearing. Some of the things we've talked about, the public interest, some not so great things that the general public is doing, the impact they're having on this hearing. Jobin, her pregame speech, if you want to call it that, was very interesting. And also that's something from my experience covering courts that you don't always get from a judge being that upfront, that right away.
And she set the tone very early. And she started off by saying, listen, my office has been inundated by emails and calls from the public who are interested in this case. And I need you to understand that I don't have any personal connections with anybody involved in this case. And she also made sure to mention, which is something that's smart that a lot of judges do. She mentions that, one, I don't have any connection, and also I've been randomly assigned for this bond hearing, which is the way Collin County, and I'm assuming a lot of counties do it. Judge Angela Tucker, who has been there for close to, I think, 14, she's been there since 2012 in the 199. Okay, so she's very seasoned. She knows what she's doing. She says, I was randomly assigned this bond hearing. It's very likely when they go through the cycle of judges, it's the administrative judge of Collin County who decides who the next judge is to take on the next matter. It's very likely she may not get the trial if it goes to trial or any of the pretrial stuff that happens. So she made it very upfront that I was randomly assigned this bond hearing.
And part of that transparency, I don't know if it was what you were about to mention, Brittany, but she made clear that the Metcalf family divorce proceedings, she was very upfront about that she did not know the Metcalfs at the time, didn't even know that this was going to be her case. I think she said just last week she learned. So she got it all out there on the table because she does want to head off any ideas of conspiracy or anything that the public might read into it as being any kind of conflict.
Absolutely. She said she just learned that she was assigned to the case last Monday. And as Jobin said, she went through the whole process of how judges are assigned to the cases. And as you mentioned, she talked about the Metcalf's family, the divorce that Austin Metcalf's family went through back in 2016. And she mentioned how she had no direct connection with that hearing, with that proceeding, and how it was actually handled in auxiliary court. So she laid it all out, no conflicts of interest. And even when it was time to talk about those who might be coming to the stand or speak.
Yeah, so this is the bond hearing, but the reason I wanted to play through this tonight is it would give us a feel of, how possibly that courtroom is going to be orchestrated, how it's going to be through the trial. And I just wanted to hear this because a lot of people, these are most likely going to be your in-courtroom correspondents out of Texas tomorrow. And, it's important. I wanted to hear how their reporting style is. They sound very thorough, which I love. And I'm looking forward to their recaps. And that's what we're going to have to do is probably play most of these recaps here. What was I just going to say? I was just going to say, I saw something up here. Nope, that's it. Twisted said, I'm looking forward to see how this trial progresses. I am too. I absolutely am too. All right, here we go.
She went through those, she looked through those names and also made a note to say, hey, I know no one, I have no connection, never had any contact with anyone that has been listed before us in the court.
So then we finally got to the bond hearing. This was not an evidentiary hearing. It wasn't about the incident itself. We didn't hear anything about this. This was solely about whether or not Karmelo Anthony could post bond, if he, by posting bond, would be insured to return for his court dates, and then also that he didn't pose any threat to the public if he were to be released from jail on bond. So the one witness we heard that was called to the witness stand was Karmelo's father. Jobin, just take us through some of his testimony, your takeaways from what he had to say on the stand.
I mean, you can tell he was nervous getting up on the stand. This is not something that people are used to doing, right? And so you can tell he was nervous at the onset. And then ultimately, when the defense is asking questions to, and his name is Andrew Anthony, right? He speaks to the fact that Karmelo has 3 younger siblings. He speaks to Karmelo being a straight A, B student, a captain of the football team and the track team. The defense is trying to tell us who Karmelo Anthony is, because a lot of what people have seen at this point are the pictures that we show through our coverage, and so the defense is trying to lay this out because ultimately this is a bond hearing, right? The defense last week put in an application, it's a motion to reduce the bond. The bond was set at $1 million. I looked at the bond application that the defense put out, and there was no amount that the defense wanted in that moment. Now we hear later from the defense attorney, Mike Howard, that they wanted it dropped to $150,000. And so now the defense is now supposed to bring experts or someone up to the stand to sort of speak to who Karmelo is.
And part of his testimony, in addition to who his son is and his background, was this family's ability to pay the bond, which Andrew Anthony mentioned that he's had to take a leave from work since this happened. That's obviously income that his family doesn't have. Brittany, what was your takeaway from him explaining kind of his family's situation since this happened?
Right. Andrew Anthony actually talked about.
Britt's asking questions. She said, me being here in Collin County, minutes from the courthouse, you stated to be there early to be able to get to trial. Trial starts at 9 a.m. How early are you suggesting? I'm going to tell you this. I live in the state of Massachusetts. I don't know if you heard of the Karen Reed trials. I covered them here on my channel. I live, 20 minutes on a non-traffic day from the courthouse. But I can tell you this. I would leave my house 20 minutes out. I would leave here at 7. On a normal day, it would take me 20 minutes to get by and near that courthouse. It would take me 2 hours just to get there and find a spot to park. So I would suggest if you're trying to get in, I would say I would not be there any later than 7 in the morning. I would even say I wouldn't even be there any later than 6 in the morning, because I'm already going to tell you, during the Karen Reed trials, we had people that were out there with lawn chairs, the media with lawn chairs, lining up and having seat holders overnight because it was limited access to the media and it was limited access to people actually getting in the courtroom. I had an in, which I'm very thankful for. I did a lot of advocacy work for Karen Reed, and I ended up getting very close to her family. So I was allowed to go in and sit in once during trial 1 and once during trial 2. So they would just kind of call the rounds of people, and they would just say, hey, we have a seat open. If you want to take it, let us know now. If not, we're making the next phone call. So I was able to get in there. Uber might even be a good idea. Yep. We have Uber now, so that might be a good idea too. This is going to be, like Natalie said, a super hot case. Twisted said, I suspect that people will need to get there at 5 a.m. This case has gotten a lot of attention. Yeah. And I mean, for Karen Reed's case, there were multiple media everywhere. There were satellite trucks everywhere in that area. They had, during the first trial, it was a little bit more wide open. We were able to kind of park in certain places. They only created like a 250-foot buffer zone around the courthouse, so we were able to get out there and park. The second trial, they put an extreme buffer zone around the courthouse, so like no one could park near the courthouse. It was even worse. I'll be honest with you, I didn't even go down there during trial 2 to get down near the courthouse. I just went down on verdict day and stood out in front of that courthouse for like 5 days waiting for the verdict to come down. So it's big. You know, I would give yourself enough time. I've learned in these really high profile cases, it's pretty crazy. All right, here we go.
You know,
back
how
to the video.
he is
Thanks for
the
asking.
sole, I guess, breadwinner of the family. His wife, he said, is a stay-at-home mom. As you mentioned, there's a family with 4 children. Carmelo being the oldest, and so that leave of absence, he said during that period, he's not receiving any income while he takes this leave. And the main reason for taking it, of course, with everything going on with the entire situation, but also his family, he says, has received lots of threats. And out of safety, they're probably going to have to move to a new home. And so when you factor in those different costs, you know, his argument was, we can't afford to pay this bond.
These questions, if I may add, these questions are very specific to a bond hearing. You would only hear these kinds of questions about your financial ability to pay. Something only comes up in a bond hearing. These are not facts or evidence in the actual murder case.
And it was also interesting that one of the managers from one of Karmelo Anthony's jobs, because we learned that he works too, one of the managers was there. In fact, there was a list of witnesses the defense said would be willing to testify. We only heard from his father, but the defense said they'd all be willing to testify more or less to the same thing. The fact that he had that much support in the courtroom, I guess that was something that was also a defense strategy.
That's one of the bond.
I'm just gonna pause this, and then who knows? I mean, I'm just gonna show Britt a video here real quick, just so I can give some context to what it was like out here for the Karen Reed trials. This is verdict day. You ready for this one? I'll play a little bit of it. This is verdict day for Karen Reed. This is how many people were out there. That's verdict day out here in Massachusetts for Karen Reed. Of course, she was found not guilty. And this is her and her team coming outside the courtroom. But there was, look at this confetti. There's probably at least 2,000 or 3,000 people down here in this congested area. Speed up a little bit here. Oh, maybe not. It's gonna hate me. That's the media, the security. Extremely high profile case. And I'm going to tell you, it may get to that point in Texas. You may see this level of media there. This is going to be a huge case, a massive case. But anyway, we'll go back to our featured video. Let's see. Here we go.
Factors, right? One of the bond factors, and so this is the judge's decision into reducing the bond, goes back to the tie to the community. Does Karmelo Anthony have a tie to the community? And so when you bring all these people who are willing to take the stand to vouch for Karmelo Anthony and say, I can vouch for him, I can vouch for if he is placed on house arrest, I can vouch for him that he's going to stay at home, as you say, and I'm going to make sure that he follows all the rules so he does not violate that bond.
And just to add, Mike Howard, who represents Karmelo Anthony and his family, he mentioned how there were at least 10 people there in support of Karmelo. And he talked about, like you mentioned, you know, he had the 2 jobs, working at Foot Locker, I believe, for 2 years, and then also at HEB in Frisco. And his manager from Foot Locker was there and was ready to testify if he needed to. And then also his coach, his football coach for his position that he played, was also there in the courtroom, and his girlfriend and some other family members who were there in support.
One of the bond factors the judge mentioned also is criminal history. Karmelo Anthony had none, but like at trial, the prosecution gets a chance to cross-examine. So once they had a chance to question Andrew Anthony, it seemed like they were inquisitive about this fundraiser. And they actually had some numbers at the time. I think they said it was up to $412,000. And it's almost as if they were questioning the family's inability to meet the $1 million bond because of that fundraiser. Jobin, what were some of the things that you remember not only the prosecution asking about, but the father's answers?
Yeah, so Bill Werski is a very talented first DA for Collin County. He used to work in Dallas County as the first DA under Susan Hawk. Now he's up there with the DA, who is also in the courtroom, Greg Willis. So Bill Werski asks the question, if you have this much money in your fundraising page, why aren't you bonding him out now? And Andrew Anthony answers that question, and he says, well, we don't have full control over that fundraising page. And so that's what sort of precipitated that discussion, because ultimately this comes down to your ability to pay the 10% surety bond that'll allow him to come home on house arrest.
Yeah, and Brittany, the defense in kind of their rebuttal to that was pointing out, well, it's not simply a bond you're paying with that money. That money is for a lot of things. As we just mentioned, the father not being able to work. They mentioned that they're going to have to pay for their own investigators as they try to get information and evidence about the incident, what happened. So the defense team, it's not cheap by any means. And that was something that it seemed like the defense was trying to hammer home. The prosecution really inquisitive about that fundraiser, though, and also the access the family had to it.
Absolutely. And one of the points that Mike Howard, the defense attorney, brought up was there is that 10% rule of the bond where you only pay 10% of what that bond is. But his argument was that when you have cases that are of high profile as this, sometimes bondsmen can increase that cost. So that 10% rule may not even, it may even be more than that. And that was part of the argument that Mike Howard was making as well when Andrew Anthony was on the stand.
Yeah. Any other observations from Andrew Anthony's testimony? Something we may not have mentioned yet, something that stuck out because it was about a 90-minute hearing altogether. It was not as quick as maybe some other bond hearings. Just anything else from the testimony or from the two sides that you remember that sticks out, Joe?
Well, I mean, I did notice that the prosecution or the state did mention, listen, he's never been convicted of another crime, but there was an altercation that occurred on campus, and it happened in February.
February 6th, I believe, was the date. Yeah.
And so that was interesting that came up in this bond hearing, I think.
And they did not provide any details. No. They mentioned that something had happened at school, but Brittany, it just kind of hung there. We didn't get any more information on that.
Right.
Well, we're going to hear about that at trial.
Andrew, Karmelo Anthony's dad, he mentioned that law enforcement wasn't involved in that particular altercation. Again, we don't know what that altercation was, who it involved, but he did mention that law enforcement.
Do you think any of those, let me ask the chat, do you think any of those people will be pulled in as witnesses? And the other really curious thing about this is the judge going to allow that to come into trial. That's some two litigating factors there. You know, will there be witnesses that are pulled from that incident, and will the judge? We know if this is the Karen Reed case, the judge wouldn't allow that to come in. But is this prior incident going to be able to come into evidence? Interesting, very, very interesting.
Wasn't involved in that. And another thing that stood out too with the prosecution, the DA's office actually presented documents from the previous representation that Karmelo Anthony had, and that document was asking about, had a line in there about the Give, Send, Go, referring back to the GoFundMe and ways that people were donating, and he had Andrew Anthony basically initial the amounts and the change in the amounts. He said the goal was changed to $500,000 to be raised, and that's when we learned that currently it stands over 400,000. And on each change, he had Andrew Anthony initial that change had happened.
Yeah. So we got a little.
So Ruthie says, I think they may bring it in just to make it stick even more. They want to make it as though he's just a violent kid. Yeah, but it's going to be up to the judge. Is the judge going to allow it? You know, that's what I mean. Because we saw that in the Karen Reed case where a lot of things that were left out and not allowed to be in, a lot of things that were very favorable for Karen that were facts and truth. So it's going to be an interesting watch on that one too.
But a taste of how these fundraisers work and just how much access the family has right away. It doesn't sound like, at least from Andrew Anthony's testimony, that it's something where they can just go to the ATM right away and withdraw money. There's a process with these online fundraisers. Okay, so the judge's ruling, we know that she lowered the bond from $1 million to $250,000. Jobin, you already mentioned that the defense team was actually asking for it to be $150,000. So she goes a little bit more than halfway to them, still not exactly what they wanted. But again, before making her ruling, she made clear that this was not any kind of statement on guilt or innocence. We are strictly talking about bond.
And she mentions the bond factors. Those bond factors are important to recognize. Age of the defendant, U.S. citizenship, whether this person has committed a crime in the past, and also the tie to the community, right? That question kept coming up. And so also, what's interesting is with these bond hearings, the judge has to weigh several things on top of the factors. A bond ultimately is put on someone because you don't want somebody sitting in jail the entire time until they go to trial. You want to give them the opportunity to somewhat live a normal life, right? Until their trial happens. So this is to ensure, one, the public safety, but also ensure compliance with a court order. You should be coming to court as you're told, when you're told, if your trial happens. And so the judge wanted to make it very clear what this bond hearing is really about.
Yeah, and I saw some of the comments online saying that, oh, why are they setting him free? The conditions of the bond, I wouldn't necessarily say he's totally free. He's under house arrest. He does have an ankle monitor. And anytime he leaves the house, he has to get the court's permission. Yeah. So, Brittany, there's a lot of conditions on this release.
Absolutely. And he also has to report to the court every Friday. And the judge made it clear, if you violate any of these restrictions, then she was going to put him back in jail. And anytime that he meets with his lawyer, that all has to be approved ahead of time by the court. They have to be aware of his whereabouts at all times, and an adult has to be with him at all times as well. And something else that Judge Tucker, Angela Tucker, mentioned, because we heard the DA's office say that the bond should impact the quality of life lost. That was the argument that came from the DA's office. And Judge Tucker, before she gave her ruling, she stated that she disagreed because she said that, one, that's not the law. And she also mentioned that there's no replacement for a life loss. Right. And that also went behind some of her decision.
That was the state's argument, right? Like the bond amount should reflect the loss of life. And she shut that down very quickly. She's like, that is not a bond factor. And so that's why it gets reduced to $250,000.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people, onlookers who are watching this case closely, might want to look at this particular hearing as part of the trial. But the judge reiterated many times this was about bond, and they're only trying to ensure, A, that he returns for those court dates, and B, that there is no threat to the public. Any defendant is going to be entitled to some kind of bond if those factors are met. Did you notice any kind of reaction anywhere in the courtroom, either from the Metcalf family, the Anthony family, when that decision was made?
Not during the decision. Now, again, we had mentioned that Austin Metcalf's mother was hunched over. Someone was consoling her from the back, right? And so we did see a lot of that during this hearing, but nothing particular. We did notice that, ultimately they had to stand up Karmelo Anthony, and the judge had to ask him point blank, do you understand these bond factors? And do you also understand these restrictions that are now placed on you? And all of his answers were one-word answers, right? And again, as you said, he was very stoic, and so, I can imagine this is all a shock to him. He's 17 years old. One day he's at a track meet, and the next moment he is in jail, right? And I'm trying to remember the actual wording that the judge said. You can either be in a box, or you can stay at home.
Basically, you can be in a box here, or you can stay at home. That was, I think, what she said, or the gist of it. Certainly, it's not one of those situations where he's going to return to the life he had before this incident. In fact, going back to what you were saying about the one-word answers, I believe the only words Karmelo Anthony spoke during the entire hearing was he said his name to identify himself, and then everything after that was yes, yes, ma'am. He understood what was being presented before him with these bond conditions. So the hearing ended, I think it was about 90 minutes long, and then I want to kind of revisit what we were talking about earlier when it was time for the families to leave. The deputies, going back to that security, they had a plan to get everyone out without any kind of conflicts passing by. They wanted to make sure that these families had enough safety and distance between them.
As it always works, the defendant leaves first, right? So the defendant has already stood up, answered the questions about the bond conditions that he accepts, right? And he is escorted out of the room, into what is sort of like an inner cell that the Collin County courthouse has. And so he'll move into there. And I was expecting him to sort of look over at family. He didn't do that. He walked straight into the room with a deputy behind him, right? They closed the door. That's when the bailiff of that court announces, this is how we're going to do this. This is how we're going to do this process. It was very regimented, right? And it started with the families leaving first, right?
Yes, families leaving first. I believe Anthony's family left first, and then Metcalf's family filed out after. And then
it's usually how it is. I know it's like that here in Massachusetts. Just going back to a recent hearing that I was at, the Enrique Delgado Garcia hearings, family left first, and then right behind them came representatives and supporters of the Mass State Police. It's usually
media left right after that. And the other thing too is, during the hearing when the judge gave the ruling,
to get down there to get video.
Anyone, no sigh of relief, it was just quiet, And that's how it was too. Also, leaving out when we were escorted out, you didn't hear it. There was no conversation between either side or anything like that. It was
despite a lot of the outside noise that we've been hearing on this case, there was no contention at all between these families, right? And so they had the Anthony family escorted out. They waited about a minute or two, and then they had the Metcalf family.
Yeah, I agree too,
The Metcalf family, we believe, went downstairs. They probably all convened in a room. The Anthony family probably all convened in a room, and then they had the media come out.
Yeah, and let's paint the scene of the courtroom itself. It's not a huge courtroom, at least not seating-wise. Would you say there's about 50 seats or so, and every seat was full? There was limited space for the media. I know some media members who were not able to get inside who wanted to be there, but this is not a big courtroom by any means. It'll be interesting to see that if this case does go to trial, if seating is expanded given the interest in this case. But this is a tiny courtroom and not a lot of space for onlookers.
Karen Reed
we
trial
kind of like shoulder to shoulder.
If this goes to trial, there are much larger rooms in the Collin County Courthouse that can seat up to 80 to 100 people. But no, this sat about 50 people. And as I understand, there was one defense attorney who I know in Collin County who was trying to get in just to witness some of this stuff. Again, no cameras inside, so you really want to sort of see how things play out. And he was not allowed in. It was just the families. It was just the state, the defense, their main attorneys, and then the media.
It'll be interesting to see if it does reach that point. And Brittany, you mentioned it about if this case does go to trial, it could be a totally different judge, totally different courtroom. So that's something we will be watching. So now after the hearing's over, everybody's left the courtroom. We're going to get to the interviews here in just a second, but could y'all tell me, I went outside to do a live shot. What happened in those immediate moments after the hearing ended?
Well, immediately following after, the media kind of came together in the lobby area, but we were waiting to see which attorneys would come out, who would be able to speak with us. And then we didn't see Karmelo Anthony's parents leave. We saw them when they came in to the courtroom earlier that morning, but we didn't see them when they left. So we're not entirely sure when they left or if they came out of a different interest or waited a while, but we didn't see them come out. And then first who came out was Mike Howard. And I know you had a chance to go over and interview with him.
It's always a massive scrum. Like as soon as the hearing ends, right? And you're hoping
everybody runs.
The DA normally does not talk because he doesn't even have the case yet. Greg Willis, who was the district attorney for Collin County, said, I don't have the case, so I don't have a whole lot to say, is the first thing he said. So he walks up, and then there's about, I'd say 10 to 12 cameras there. And we're hoping for him to have some insight on how he feels about this bond being reduced. And he said point blank, I don't have the case yet. We're still waiting on the case from Frisco Police. So the Frisco Police Department files the report, and then the Collin County DA executes that report and creates the charges, right? Files the charges, right? And so, and then he says, we don't have the case yet. When I talked with the DA last week, he said, we're hoping to have it within the next couple of weeks. He's going to be patient. These are things that need to be thorough. Frisco Police Department is also going to want to be thorough about this. And so that's what he mentioned in
a lot of formality.
One or 2 minutes that he talked with the media.
Yeah, and defense attorney Mike Howard, who just took lead counsel over the weekend, I believe Friday is when he took.
So Time checking in on Facebook says Karmelo, and listen, we love all opinions here. Karmelo was attacked. Everyone is about to see how the Metcalf boys jumped in. Okay, very interesting take. We'll keep an eye on this. We'll keep an eye on this case.
Over
some may
that
agree, some may not.
Lead counsel for the defense team. He came out. I was out there. I saw everybody scrummed around him. Yeah. Jobin, as you mentioned, it can be a scrum, a lot of cameras. We have his interview that I want to listen to right now, and we'll discuss after we listen to his comments.
Self-defense is a protection that applies to each and every one of us. There are two sides to every story. And Karmelo is a 17-year-old kid and an excellent student. He is the captain of his track team. He is the captain of his football team. And prior to this, what was on his mind was what college he was going to go to. This is a tragedy all the way around for both families. Rushing to judgment, trial by public perception and trial by media is not how we ensure justice is done. We are confident that after a full investigation, that the truth will come out. Thank you.
Mike, you took umbrage with the state's assessment. It's simple and brutal. Why so?
Well, the fact of the matter is, like I said, there's two sides to every story, and we've only.
Why is that guy there? I'm not talking about the attorney. What is this Dominique Alexander guy doing there, acting like he's some fucking attorney? Like, you're a horrible spokesperson, okay? You've probably brought on more things than this family needs right now. You have a massive criminal history. You've beaten a 2-year-old baby. Okay, that's been documented in court documents. You've beat on multiple women that have been documented in court. I would think that this family, please tell me they're a lot smarter than this. Please tell me tomorrow when they roll up at court that guy's not going to be with them. Please tell me they've taken the opportunity to do a background check on this guy or just read some of the media. Like, how do you justify that? Yeah, we want you representing our family and you beat a child. I don't know how anybody would want that person up there speaking for them after him beating a child. I don't get it. And it is disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting. All right, here we go.
In any criminal case, the police investigate and the defense is always far behind that. And so it is a one-sided investigation to this point, and even that investigation is still ongoing. So to say that it happened this way or that way is just not accurate at this point. All of the facts are going to come out, and that's why our system of justice requires that we keep our mind open and we let the facts come out as they are after a full investigation.
Stay on topic. This is about Karmelo's case. Well, I am staying on topic. And you know why I'm staying on topic is because this man becomes a part of the story, a part of the case. And the reason being is that the Karmelo Anthony family has chosen this man, a baby beater, a woman beater, to be their representative. So I am staying on topic in this case. I am staying. He's part of this topic. He's part of this whole case of what's going on. So I am staying on topic. All right, here we go.
I anticipate that he will be able to make bond. I can't speak to how quickly that will go. Funds, in the funds that have been raised are not quick to come out. And then, there's obviously a process to the release process once bond is posted.
The big question that a lot of people have is, why was this young man armed on school property?
That's an understandable question, but it's not something that, frankly, we're prepared to even go into. This is something that I know the police and the prosecution want to get it right and want to have a full and fair investigation, and so do we. So it would be irresponsible for me or them at this point to start saying, this is what happened, this is why, anything. So I understand that's a big question. It's going to be a big question, and it's something that we will find out. And we ask that the public, as hard as it is, withhold judgment and let both of these families have justice. That let both of these young men, the Metcalf family and the memory of who they've lost, but also Karmelo, have a fair and full justice process.
How does your feeling on the reduction of this bond? Do you feel it's fair?
I feel it's fair. Bond, as the judge said, is not supposed to be an instrument of oppression. It's not supposed to keep people in jail. It's not supposed to punish. It's supposed to ensure that a person...
Did someone bump your head? Did you fall and bump your head today? I'm going to go back to this. All he did was spoke up for the family. He is not the family spokesperson, never was. Okay, so wait a minute here. I don't know. Maybe I lost something in translation here. Let's address this. You have someone that is at the press conference standing in front of the family, has a podium that has his logo on it, and he goes up there and he's speaking for the family. So how is that not a family spokesperson? Can you explain that to me? Because I'll play the interview. We can hear it. And I think in the actual interview, he says, I'm speaking for the family. Let's go back and let's go back and investigate.
Shows up to court, complies with all conditions, and it's supposed to keep the community safe. So this is a large and substantial bond, and the judge has, I think, rightly imposed reasonable conditions that will ensure both Karmelo and the Anthony family's safety, but also the safety of the community.
What was Karmelo's like reaction today? He didn't seem very talkative toward you. And how has jail, I guess, been so far for this teenager? And is he like on suicide watch or anything like that?
I honestly can't speak to Karmelo's reaction because I was so focused on the hearing and what was going on and what the judge was saying. I think we have to all remember Karmelo.
All right, we're gonna just get out of this because I want to go to that. I want to go to this hearing now. Let's go back to this press conference. Let's listen to what Dominique Alexander had to say. We'll play the first couple of minutes of it because I can remember in that presser he said, "I'm speaking for the family," and I could be wrong, but I'm having a pretty good feeling about that's what he said. So let's make sure it's up. We got the caps on. Let's listen here.
I want to start off this press conference to say something as a deep note that I can tell America. What we've seen at the beginning of this press conference, the father being at this press conference, these are my words. Don't quote anybody, is a disrespect to the dignity of his son. Next Generation Action Network from the beginning has respected the loss of life. No matter our opinion of it, we have kept.
So he just branded this press conference. He just said, Next Generation Action Network. He's branding it.
Our opinion close.
All right,
we have not attacked. We have not shared the information that was shared with us about Austin Metcalf because we respect the dignity of life and loss. And as a minister, I would not attack a grieving family, even if I disagree with them. When I have stood before this podium for people who have died at the hands of law enforcement, I have asked for that same manner of respect. And even when the shoe is on the other foot, I will not do that. And all I'm going to say, so it don't be asked later, is that was disrespectful and just shows you all the character who is not invited. He knows that it's inappropriate to be near this family.
It's a public press conference.
And so I say to people,
want.
actions speak louder than words. Okay? What he has failed into is the political operatives that want to make this thing a political thing of hate, yet bigotry, and yet racism. We have conservative operatives that have been posting nonstop about this case. It is outright disrespectful. We haven't been doing it. The Next Generation Action Network has been here, popular and unpopular.
And he just said, we. So when you're saying we, are you not representing the family? You're including them. He's saying we, and he's pointing, we. How is this not a spokesperson for the family?
So regardless of what's going on, that was disrespectful. Disrespectful. And I will leave it to y'all to define it. But of course we want to.
We.
Y'all, I'm Minister Dominique Alexander. I serve as the president of the Next Generation Action Network. Today I come before you with a heavy heart, but determined in spirit, not just as an advocate, but as a Black man, as a father, as a protector, community, and children. There are 4 critical points I must address today, and I want to make sure that the public and the media and everyone who believes in truth and justice. First, the misinformation about the fund. From the very beginning, there was an intentional disinformation surrounding the fund created in the support of the Anthony family. The Karmelo Anthony Fund, hosted by Give, Send, Go, let's be clear. The family has not received one dime. Any of the media could have verified this, but we saw on Twitter, we saw on Facebook, and so many different things.
We.
Of the false, lavish life of this family. $800,000 home, purchased Escalade in private security. Let me make this very clear. The Next Generation Action Network has always had its security detail. Many of you that know us in the Dallas and Fort Worth media know that we have our own security detail. One of the individuals that escorted Karmelo Anthony out of jail is here present with us now. They are a part of the Next Generation Action Network security team. The family hasn't hired any private contractors or whatever, or splurged or whatever. But if they have the audacity to spend money for their safety and security, that's their prerogative. The family has not withdrawn, and just until recently, just yesterday, they were officially notified by Give, Send, Go that they could start the withdrawal process. They gave me every information that I needed.
Oh, wait a minute here. Why would he, wait a minute. Wait, because now it's going to get really good. If he's not the spokesperson for the family, then why is he calling Give, Send, Go? That would be a spokesperson, right? I'm calling on the behalf of the Karmelo Anthony family, right? Right? Why didn't they make that phone call? Can you explain that?
In these news outlets that I've never
in his
heard
words,
could have did the same thing. When I first called Give, Send, Go, they gave me every information that I needed. Okay? So that's what I'm going to say on regards to that. Let me make this very clear. This family never authorized a single fund on the GoFundMe platform. All of the funds that were raised on the GoFundMe were all fraud.
Get past his mic bump here.
To report these funds. One of the funds we identified raised up to $11,000. So a post about anything that stated that GoFundMe took everything down regarding Karmelo Anthony, that was at the request of the families and their supporters. This family never tried to create an account on GoFundMe. The Next Generation Action Network is very well aware of the company's policy regarding raising funds for legal defense, okay? Since this tragedy unfolded, the Anthony family has been subject to unimaginable amount of hate, racism, threats to their safety. People have sat outside their house, sent objects delivered to their door, publicly harassed, online and in person. This is not just about.
If that happened, I don't condone any of that. Any of my watchers here on our channel, on our community channel here, I don't condone any activity like that.
No.
Let's play.
It's about
I
the
want to
family
hear
who dare
him.
to stand and demand justice and in return and receive ugliness that racism in this country still breeds. But let me say this loud and clear. We are not scared. We are not moving. We will not be silent. Isn't that a spokesperson? As the president of the Next Generation Action Network, we will never ask the oppressor for permission to liberate our people. We will not ask for permission to stand up for the rights of our children. The Next Generation Action Network has stood on both sides of the fence in ensuring that justice is served. Now, getting to the information that the Next Generation Action Network wanted to share with the public today. And I will go ahead and pass it over to the mother and once I make this statement, okay? All right, there's two more final. For the last week and a half, the Next Generation Action Network has engaged in communications with Frisco ISD to ensure that Karmelo Anthony's due process is not violated. We know that in the state of Texas, there are things that are discretionary things and decisions by the leadership of Frisco ISD, right? There are clear guidance in the state and education code regarding expulsion of a student. We have asked several times. We didn't just rush. We have had these conversations over the last several days. And we have stated that it is just outright wrong.
So he's communicating communication with ISD, but he's not the family spokesperson. In the person's opinion that said earlier, they said he's not the spokesperson. I keep hearing we. And then why, if he's not the spokesperson, why did he talk to Give Send Go? Why is he talking to ISD? So that's a spokesperson. Well, let's listen a little bit more.
To get involved in this, Karmelo Anthony doesn't have to walk. He doesn't have to involve in any senior activities. But Karmelo Anthony is a 3.7 GPA student. And if he doesn't even go to class for the remainder of the year, he would graduate. Okay? We've asked that Frisco do not make a decision in this situation. But Frisco ISD has notified of their intent to expel Karmelo Anthony from school 1 month before his high school graduation. That just shows me that Frisco ISD is trying to push off the blame. And what I have not heard the media say, as many media outlets have asked us what went on, I'm trying to find how many of y'all have asked the superintendent or one single board of trustee, why didn't you cancel or postpone? With weather in that magnitude, you couldn't have a track meet in rain or thunderstorm or clouds. Y'all are the media. Ask your journalists, your weather journalists, how the weather was that day and that time. Y'all do that research. Because as a person who is the administrator of your children, you are responsible for the safety of the children. And so it seems as if Frisco ISD is trying to push this off by making this decision that they do not have to make. So the Next Generation Action Network, outside of the legal process, will be going through different avenues regarding to ensure that we fight for the rights of Karmelo Anthony. Okay? So in the next coming days.
That's not a spokesperson? Right there. We are going to fight for the rights of Karmelo Anthony, and they have every right to pick whoever they want to represent. And I talked about this in my previous show. I would have hoped they would have had their attorney out there speaking for them and not this guy. And the point that I'm getting here is, if some people have just come in, this guy here, and it's noted in court documents, and I want everybody to know this guy beat a baby, a 2-year-old baby. It's in court documents. He's beat women. He's assaulted women. A 2-year-old baby was beat by this man, and you're allowing him to get up there and be a representative of the family. I would hope that someone at this point would have chirped in their ear and said, look, you probably don't want this guy out there representing you. He's not a good guy. Here's the reasons why. Here's the court documents to support this. They can have anybody they want to represent them, but I just wouldn't choose this man.
We will be announcing to the public. We will do direct action outside of Frisco ISD administration office, because this is outright wrong. You are getting involved in a process that even the legal process has asked us to respect. And we're asking you to do that same thing. You do not have to get involved in this situation. But it seems that even with us going and meeting or having conversations, they have made their mind up. And we want to make sure that the records, that we talk truth to power in regards. I wanted to lay this out to ensure, because of the sensitivity of this case, there are so many moving factors that I have to explain so that this family does not have to explain.
Well, there you go. He's going to explain it so the family doesn't have to explain it. And I think we're getting to my point here. He's the spokesperson for the family. He's the spokesperson for the family. So I think that's clear enough evidence of the things that I've played here in this to debunk the claim that he's not the spokesperson. So there's that. We'll move on from this. But anyway, I just want to get to some evidence here. And I even remember, and I mean, we could keep going here. I even remember him saying that for here on out, I will be the spokesperson for the family. Let's see what he says at the end of the press conference here. Let's see. Let's go to the very end. Let's see.
He should be afforded the same right. Nobody in the public media has one video camera, but we got the video of Cal Rittenhouse with an AK-47 shooting 3 people in the back. We got that. And he raised more than $2 million publicly, and nobody says anything. So since they tried to come for us, I call for the community's overwhelming support for this fund. The disinformation that was put out was literally deliberate to prevent
talking
you
about money.
from helping this family. And I want you to give overwhelming support to show them the community united can never be divided. And I'm going to say this again, and this is for everybody.
Okay.
Black people in America, while the current occupant sits at 1600 Pennsylvania, Black people in America don't have to pull the race card. It's what we live as a reality every day. It's what we have to teach our children. We don't want to, but we have to. We don't like to, but if we want to sleep at night, we got to. I ain't pulling no race card. I live it. I'm reminded all the time that I'm a Black man in America. And what y'all just showed to Judge Tucker is just reminded that hate and bigotry and racial reconciliation in this country, we have respected the process. I believe that Austin Metcalf is about to have his funeral. And I wouldn't dare, even with the information I know, and plenty of people can share that and all that, but we have prevented from speaking about that in these type of public forums. It will come out. They have a more than well-capable attorney, and this family will go through a process of being able to get prepared for this trial. So I just say this real quick. This is our final time.
This is our final
Speaking
time.
to public and holding a press conference regarding this particular case. Now, the Next Generation Action Network will talk about Frisco ISD, but we will not do this. I will not ask this mother to do this.
Family.
The attorney will not. We won't do this again. Don't ask. We will see you at trial. Whatever venue that is, we will see you there. I stand 10 toes down supporting this family. And I want to thank all of the community leaders and people that I have seen that have came here today. Bishops and pastors and clergy, community leaders with respectability in this community. I see them today. And I want to thank them for their presence because this family needs strength right now. Thank you and God bless you.
I mean, I don't know, is kind of turning to the family and speaking through that process.
Venue that is, we
several
will see
times.
You there. I stand 10 toes down, speaking to public and holding a press conference regarding this particular case. Now, the Next Generation Action Network will talk about Frisco ISD, but we will not do this.
That to me, I'm sorry. That looks like looking at the family to get an approval. That's a spokesperson. So I think we've shown plenty of evidence here tonight that Dominique Alexander is a spokesperson for the Anthony family. And I really do. I really wish they would have a better representative. I really wish it was their lawyer that was up there speaking instead of this guy. It's not a good guy. This guy is not a good guy. He's a baby beater. And you know, we'll show an article that talks about it. And it's right here. Shockingly, I hope I got the right screen up. Shockingly, Alexander has a criminal history that includes a 2009 conviction for injury to a child after violently shaking his girlfriend's 2-year-old son, resulting in a serious injury. He was sentenced to probation, but in 2016, he violated that probation, racking up multiple offenses and failing to comply with court requirements. He was arrested. He later was arrested on a felony assault charge for domestic violence in 2019. Yet despite his troubled record, he continues to position himself as a prominent activist in Texas, regularly speaking at rallies and lead protests. And the funny thing about it, We even had a more detailed article the other night that we read through, and he actually admitted to shaking the baby. So that's how good that guy is. I only pray for that family to have a better representative than Dominique Alexander. I really do. And I want their son to get a fair trial. Their son deserves that. He deserves that in our court system. By the way, if you haven't, you can check out ltlmedianews.com. All my writings are over there. And I'll drop the link here in the chat for you. If you're not getting my notifications on YouTube, which YouTube has changed its algorithm, you go to alerts, click down here right on the graphic, and you can sign up for text alerts. It's free to do that, and you can opt out at any time, and I'll drop the link for the text alerts in here. All right, we're going to finish it up with some possible opening and closing statements from the prosecution and from the defense team, and then I will give away the Justice for Kyron Lopes t-shirt tonight. All right, so what I was thinking in the opening statements, we might hear something like this from the state. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this case is not about social media. It's not about rumor. It's not about race. It's not about who yelled the loudest outside the courthouse. This case is about what happened on April 2nd, 2025 at a high school track meet in Frisco, Texas. Austin Metcalf was 17 years old. He was at a school event. He was with his teammates. He was under a team's tent. And in a matter of seconds, he was stabbed once in the chest and died from that wound. The evidence will show you that Karmelo Anthony was not under his own team's tent. He was asked to leave, words exchanged. There may have been pushing, but there may have been contact. But with that evidence, it will not show is Austin Metcalf used deadly force. What the evidence will show is that Austin Metcalf had a weapon. And what the evidence will show is that Karmelo Anthony had not only another choice, but to pull out a knife and drive it into Austin's chest. You will hear that after the stabbing, Karmelo Anthony ran. You will hear his own statements. You will hear that he said he was defending himself and saying the word, but saying the word self-defense does not make it self-defense. The law does not allow someone to turn a schoolyard dispute into a homicide because they were angry, embarrassed, or wanted to win a confrontation. Deadly force must be reasonable. It must be immediate and necessary. And when you hear the evidence, the state believes that you will see this was not reasonable, this was not necessary, it was murder. And at the end of the case, you will only ask the question to return only the verdict that supports by an evidence of guilty. And then the defense opening statement could be something like this. Ladies and gentlemen of the state, ladies and gentlemen, the state told you a story with one ending already written, but trials are not supposed to begin with the ending. Trials are about evidence, they're about context, and they're about what happened in the moments before everything went up terribly wrong. There are no disputes that Austin Metcalf died. This is a tragedy. There were two families whose lives will never be the same, but tragedies alone is not proof of murder. The evidence will show that this confrontation did not happen in a vacuum. Karmelo Anthony was a 17-year-old kid at a chaotic, rainy, clouded school event. He was confronted. He was told to leave. The confrontation escalated. Witness had described physical contact, and he described Austin grabbing, pushing, or touching Karmelo. And at that moment, the question is not what people on the internet think now. The question is what Karmelo reasonably believed then. You will hear that immediately after that happened, Karmelo did not invent some complicated story. He was protecting himself. He said Austin put his hands on him. There were not words created by lawyers. A month later, these are not words spoken in the immediate aftermath. The state has the burden, not Karmelo. The state must prove beyond a reasonable doubt this is not self-defense, that this was not self-defense. And if the evidence leaves you to believe reasonable doubt about Karmelo believed in that moment and what he feared in that moment, about whether he acted to protect himself in that moment, then the law requires a verdict of not guilty. At the end of this case, we will allow you to follow the law, set aside the noise, and find Karmelo Anthony not guilty. So a closing statement from the state could look something like this. Ladies and gentlemen, the defense wants this case to turn into one phrase: I was defending myself. But self-defense is not a magic phrase. It's not a get out of jail free card. It's not to match the evidence. Austin Metcalf was unarmed. This was a dispute under a tent at a high school track event. There may have been words, there may have been pushing, but the response was a knife to the chest. This is the heart of the case. The defense wants you to focus on fear, but fear must not be reasonable. Deadly force must be immediate necessary. And the evidence does not show that Karmelo Anthony was facing deadly force. It shows that he was escalating a confrontation into killing. Think about that sequence: a dispute over a tent, a warning, a hand going into a bag, a knife, one stab in the chest, then Austin Metcalf dying from that wound. This is not a mutual fight where both teenagers walked away. This is not about a split-second shove and ended with a bruise. This ended with a 17-year-old boy dead at a school event. The law protects true self-defense. It does not protect violence. It does not allow someone to bring a knife into a fistfight or pushing match and call it justified after the fact. The state has proven this case beyond a reasonable doubt. Austin Metcalf cannot speak for himself in this courtroom, but the evidence does. The witness do, the knife does, the wound does. Find the defendant guilty of murder. And then we have possible closing statement for the defense. Ladies and gentlemen, the state keeps saying this case is simple, and it's not. It's tragic, it's emotional, it's painful, but it's not simple. The law does not ask whether we wish this had ended differently, because everyone's wish is that. The law asks whether the state proved beyond a reasonable doubt that Karmelo Anthony did not act in self-defense, and they have not done that. You heard evidence that this was a confrontation escalated physically. You heard that Austin put his hands on Karmelo. You heard that Karmelo said immediately afterwards that he was protecting himself. Those statements matter because if they were made before lawyers, before press conferences, before online narratives, before anyone picked a side, the prosecution wants you to judge this case from the calm of a courtroom. But Karmelo did not have the luxury of sitting there in the weeks to think about it. He was 17 years old in a tense confrontation, beginning physically confronted, and he reacted in the moment in fear. Maybe you would have handled it differently. Maybe I would have handled it differently. But that's not the legal standard. The question is whether the state eliminated reasonable doubt about what Karmelo reasonably believed in that moment. They have not. There's unanswered questions about the exact moments, the exact timing, the exact threat level, and what Karmelo perceived. Those are not small details in self-defense. Those are the case. A young man is dead, and nothing about your verdict can bring Austin Metcalf back. But the law requires more than grief. It requires proof beyond a reasonable doubt. And if there's reasonable doubt, Karmelo Anthony acted in self-defense, and your verdict must be not guilty. So those are some opening and possible closing statements to that. Anyway, let's give away a shirt. Hashtag shirt will get you entered into this giveaway. And how we're going to do this is you've got to be able to email me immediately after the show. You've got to provide me somewhere where this shirt can be sent. And if you want to read around about Chiron's case, please go to my website, ltlmedianews.com. And I really would love to get this out to someone that they can wear this and start spreading the news about Chiron's case. So like I said, hashtag shirt will get you entered for the t-shirt giveaway. And what we'll do is the winner can email me their information. So we got one. Let's give it a couple minutes here. Get your hashtags in. It's a free shirt. Get your hashtags in. If not, it's only going to be one person that gets it. So hashtag shirt. We'll give it a couple minutes. And we'll give this away. Great. And then we're going to end this live for tonight. We'll give it another minute or so. Spin the wheel. All right. Oh, did I shut it down? No, I got it. Here we go. Let me bring that back on the screen. All right. We'll go about another minute or so, and then we'll spin the wheel on this one. Again, it's a free t-shirt. If you want to be involved, hashtag shirt will get you in there. And thank you, Natalie. Yeah, it's a very important case. I got a lot of articles on my website, ltlmedianews.com. You can read about Chiron's case. Believe it or not, I just got an update from Chiron's mom. I haven't read it yet. Hopefully she has some news that I can share with you guys. Thank you, Granny. Appreciate that. Get in there. It's a free shirt. All you've got to do is just email me after the show, and we'll just do a little quick verification just to verify the winner. And we'll get this sent out to you. So we'll go about another 30 seconds, and then we're going to spin the wheel and give this away. We got 7 entries right now. Appreciate you. All right. Let's do this. 7 entries. We'll spin the wheel, and then we're going to shut this one down. All right, here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. And the winner is Time for Change 3786. This is the person that won. What you need to do is email me at letstalklivepodcast@gmail.com. We will get you verified. Super quick little thing that I have you to do, and we'll get this sent out to you. Yeah, congratulations. So like I said, email me at letstalklivepodcast@gmail.com. Okay. I will. I send all my stuff out. I don't wait 4 freaking months and hold on to shit. I send it out, and I'll get it sent out as quick as you get me your information. You can email me. We'll do a quick verification, and then we'll get it sent out to you. I can most likely get it out tomorrow if you email me tonight and we do a quick verification. All right, everybody. So that's going to be it for tonight. I apologize about the internet when we started off the stream. I have no control over that, but I'm going to look into it. Maybe I need to change a wire. I might upgrade my my router. We'll go from there and get it all taken care of. So next time when we go live, sometimes what happens too is StreamYard, when there's a lot of people using the platform, I noticed it will lag, and there was probably a lot of people on at that specific time. But that's it. So listen, jury selection starts tomorrow in Karmelo Anthony's case. I don't think there's going to be much action. They're going to go through jury selection. If they get a jury, then most likely on Tuesday, this will start. Court is supposed to start tomorrow at 9 a.m. And we'll keep our eyes on this. We'll keep our eyes on it. If I don't see any major updates, I'm probably going to plan a different type of show tomorrow night. But I will update you guys as trial starts and keeps going. Yeah, I think 1 or 2 days tops as well too. I agree. Yep, I agree too. But we'll keep focused on this. We have other things that we focus here on the channel. And please come back tomorrow night, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'll be here. I'll be live. Appreciate everybody coming in. I looked up at one point. We had over 500 people across 4 platforms watching tonight. And I appreciate that. I appreciate all my moderators who were here, my members, the people that supported me by sending super chats. I had a PayPal earlier. Appreciate that too. Keeps the lights on here in the studio. And we'll be back tomorrow night, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Love all you guys. Please take care. Be safe. and we'll talk soon. Bye, everybody. Peace.